Everybody, my name is Aya D. Simone. I'm a member of the board of the League of Women Voters of Greenwich and co-chair of the Communications Committee. I'm happy to be here with you today. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Greenwich, Stamford and New Canaan, we're very pleased to present the candidate debates for the upcoming Connecticut Senate District 36 State Senate debates. We have a special election on August 17th, as you know, and we're glad that we were able to coordinate this debate for all of you. We're very excited to be able to bring you the candidate debate, and we're glad that you joined us. I'm going to take 1 minute to explain how today's debate will function, and then I'll hand it over to the moderator to introduce our candidates and begin the debate. This, as usual, is a webinar. Only the candidates and the moderators will be visible on video and audible on video. The audience will be in view-only mode and will not be visible on the screen. Today, we're doing things a little differently. We will not be using the chat functionality for questions today, as this is a debate format. However, the debate is being recorded and broadcast live on GCTV channel 79, as well as being live streamed on YouTube, just in case there's any issues with Zoom and any of you watching would like to jump over to one of those platforms to continue watching. Also, we will be recording this and it will be available on the League of Women Voters of Greenwich website and our YouTube channel tomorrow. So for today's debate format, we will be using a cumulative time format and it will go for approximately 45 minutes. My colleague, Kay Maxwell, will explain the debate format in more detail shortly. I'll leave that to her. She's the expert. We're on a really tight timeline tonight and we have a hard stop after 1 hour, so we'll need to stick to our timelines and our schedule very, very carefully. With that said, I'd like to hand it over to the president of the League of Women Voters of Greenwich, Sandy Waters, to kick things off. Sandy, over to you.
Gotta handle a lot of things at once. Welcome, everyone. The League plans candidate debates like this as part of its fulfillment of its educational mission as a 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. While the League supports civic engagement and participation in the political process, it is steadfastly nonpartisan. This means that although we have positions on some issues, the League never supports any candidate for public office. We are grateful to the candidates for coming and sharing their ideas about how to best serve Greenwich as a part of the state Senate. We appreciate their support for our nonpartisan status. They have agreed not to edit the resulting recording. The COVID pandemic circumstances have changed the debate format a little bit. We thank the town for allowing us to make use of their tech capacity in the town hall meeting room. We have agreed to follow the town's requirement that we treat this session as a public meeting. Thanks as well to Kay Maxwell for moderating. Kay is not a Greenwich resident. She is a past president of the Connecticut and the National Leagues. Her job is to ensure that all candidates have a fair and relatively equal opportunity to speak. She has a long history of fair moderation of league debates, not only in Greenwich, but elsewhere in the state. A special thank you to Becky Gillen, who organized this event. She compiled the questions submitted by registrants. There were almost 100 questions submitted on our website. Some were duplicates. She kept all questions that candidates could respond to and organized them by topic to make clear which topics received the most questions. Both Republican and Democratic members of the League board had the opportunity to review and comment on the assorted list. The moderator has selected the questions being asked this evening. Thank you also to the volunteer League timers who will keep track of each candidate's speaking time. And a special thank you also to the League's Aya D. Simone and to Jenny Larkin and GCTV for managing the technological challenges to ensure that all attendees could see and hear the candidates. I just want to mention that we've recently published an online voter's guide with information about the candidates' views and important voting information. It's available just by inputting one's home address. You may find it on our website, lwvgreenwich.org, and also at the League vote411.org website. At this point, I'd like to introduce Kay Maxwell, who will be running the debate for us tonight. Kay, it's all yours.
Thank you, Sandy, and welcome everyone. Our purpose this evening, as it is with any candidate debate, is to provide you with the opportunity to hear the candidates' views on the issues facing the state. This format is designed to allow the candidates time to discuss the issues. The only rule is that the total time used by each candidate by the conclusion of the debate be approximately the same. I will be posing the questions which have come from the public, as it was just explained. And in our brief time, we will obviously only be able to address a few issues. So if one you are interested in is not asked, I encourage you to visit the candidate's website. The candidates are not restricted to 1 or 2 minute responses. Instead, they can spend as little or as much time as they feel is appropriate, within limits, to discuss each issue. Our goal is to encourage debate. The candidates will take turns being the first to respond to a question, and following the question period, each candidate will make a 2-minute closing statement. Members of the league, as has been mentioned, are serving as timers, and they will keep the candidates and me informed of the time expended. If a serious imbalance occurs, then I will step in and try and sort it out. But typically I don't need to do that because the candidates can see the amount of time that they've talked as well. The candidates are running in a special election, as you know, to be held on August 17th to fill the state Senate seat in District 76. They are, to my immediate left, Ryan Fazio, the Republican candidate. To his left is John Blankley, the petition candidate. And to his left is Alexis Gevanter, the Democratic candidate. And so now to the debate. And the first candidate to respond will be Mr. Fazio. And the question is, traffic and noise on I-95 and the Merritt Parkway appear to be worse than pre-COVID, while public transportation ridership remains low. How would you propose to address these transportation issues, especially if the quote, work from home, end quote, trend continues? Mr. Fazio?
First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting us tonight. I want to thank Kay for moderating, and I want to thank my 2 Democratic opponents for joining me tonight. This is one of the most important issues I hear frequently from voters. For instance, noise has gotten worse around 95, and I think we need a noise study by the State Department of Transportation in order to figure out how we can reduce noise pollution, especially for our downtown residents. I also think that we need a traffic study from the State Department of Transportation. From exit 2 to exit 9 during the daytime, it's almost persistently a parking lot. That's totally unacceptable. I've lived in this district for almost my entire life, and it seems like traffic only gets worse and worse in one direction. I think actually marginal improvements to traffic flow with the State Department of Transportation studying bottlenecks, especially at on-ramps and off-ramps, and trying to make even marginal improvements to the traffic flow would substantially alleviate a lot of the traffic. You just consider if you're going south on 95, the exit 8 off-ramp in Stamford is a lot easier to maneuver than, say, the exit 5 or exit 3 or exit 2 off-ramps going southbound in Greenwich. And that can make major differences to the traffic backing up miles and miles. This is a very important throughway for not just our district, but the entire region and the entire country. And then public transportation, we need to make sure the state focuses its resources on the most high value projects in the entire state, which is Metro North. Metro North is probably the most important railway in the country. And yet the state government under Democratic leadership for decades has focused its resources upstate on places like the Hartford line and New Britain Busway, where each rider is subsidized in excess of $100 on the Hartford line. That's unacceptable. I think we need to prioritize the highest value projects, which are primarily located in this district.
Mr. Blankley, the same question.
And as with Ryan, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and my 2 opponents here. On more than one occasion, I've had the opportunity to thank the League, and on this occasion, I would like to thank you even more than on previous occasions. You have become a bulwark for us against infringements on our civil liberties. And the work that you do to make sure that as many people as possible can vote across the entire country is work that I think is just stupendous, and I thank you for it. As to the question, this feeds right into the major proposal that I have for dealing with the major issue that we have. On a daily basis, do we go around thinking about problems that we have in the state? Do we go around thinking about unfunded pension liabilities or debt overhang? I, who know about these things, not even I think about these things on a daily basis. And certainly no one out there either thinks about them. What they do think about is the problems of the roads. And as Ryan rightly says, it is a catastrophe out there on the roads right now. My office for my business that I started 20 years ago that employs dozens of employees is in Shelton. When I travel up there in the morning, it's not a problem, but I see the other side of the road, it is a parking lot. And when I come home in the evening, it's the reverse. So the solution to this problem, or one of the solutions to the problem, is going bold, going really bold. And that, for me, is an infrastructure project that I have championed before when I've run for office and will champion again now. And that is taking trucks off the roads. It is a shipping solution. It involves port development in Bridgeport, in New London, in Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. All the trucks and containers that we see going over our roads mostly are coming from New Jersey, where they land from international sources, and they come up through our state to destinations in our state, but beyond our state. Now, what we should be doing is putting those trucks on so-called roll-on, roll-off vessels that would come to our, that would take the trucks on, and they would come to our ports. The trucks would come off, and this would take trucks off the road. The second way to get trucks off the road and get freight transported more efficiently is the construction of a railroad bridge across the Hudson. There is one now. It was built in 1890. It was the longest bridge in the world at the time at Poughkeepsie. Unfortunately, it burnt, would you believe, in the 1970s, and it has now become a pedestrian walkway. It's a tourist attraction, as a matter of fact. But just think of the major road bridge that was built for 684 for the roads. Now, we could do the same thing for rail. What that railroad bridge did back in the day was take goods back and forth between the industrial areas of Connecticut down to the industrial areas of New York and Pennsylvania. Third, in terms of dealing with the congestion, is the continued promotion of 5G. And the point of that is that in due course, we will have automatic vehicles. It is not happening just yet, but even 5 years ago, when I last ran for this office, I did point out that AV taxis, Ubers, were actually operating in Pennsylvania. So it is happening and will come sooner than we think. And as for pollution, my solution will remove trucks from the roads. It will relieve congestion, reduce pollution. It will create jobs. And finally, what it will do is attract new businesses to our state. We think about how to attract businesses, and one of the things that holds people back is not education, it's not the beauty of our state, it's not the cultural advantages, it is the traffic on our roads. And if we can do something about that, then we'll go a long way towards solving the traffic problem.
Ms. Gevanter, but could I remind the timers if you would continue to hold up your pads so that we can see the time? If you would hold up yours from, yeah, so that we can see as we move along, everybody can see. Thank you. Sorry.
I also just want to thank here we go. I also just want to thank the League of Women Voters for having us here today. I want to thank Ryan and John, and of course, everybody here viewing in the audience. You know, thank you so much for joining us today. Look, I agree. We have to address congestion on our roads and improve safety. This impacts not only our quality of life, of course, in terms of noise, but also our health and our environment. Also, you know, investing in these infrastructure projects is good for our economy because, you know, it's going to attract businesses to Connecticut, create good paying jobs, which also brings new residents to Connecticut. So this is really important. we have an opportunity here with an influx of money coming into the state, not just through a new law passed in Connecticut, but also our federal infrastructure bill that is expected to be passed on a bipartisan basis in DC. So I want to make sure my top priority is to make sure that that money comes to our district right away. I have a wonderful relationship with our federal delegation and also with our state delegation. And so I am going to make sure from day one to be directing as much money there as possible for our trains, for our roads. We're going to be working on 95. I want to make sure that we have quiet pavement technology and the other latest technology to reduce noise and pollution. I also want to make sure in terms of our rail to invest in our Stamford Transportation Center and to bring more frequent direct service to New Canaan. And I will do all of this without raiding our rainy day fund or borrowing our way out of this because we are finally improving our state's credit rating and we can't jeopardize that. Thank you.
All right, and again, if I could remind the timers, please leave your pads up so that we can see the time until you come to the next time you have to record. All right, now, sorry for that interruption. Does anybody have anything they want to add on that topic before we move to something else? Nope, okay. Then Mr. Blankley, you're first to respond to this question. In the past several years, Southern Connecticut has increasingly experienced water shortages and prolonged power outages. What short and long-term solutions would you advance to improve our energy and resource infrastructure?
One of the experiences that I had in my life that I'm proudest of was when I worked for a large international company, and we had the job of looking at every kind of a new energy source that might be, whether it was wind or geothermal or solar. And at the time, we hit upon solar, and I was part of the group that started a solar company that eventually became the largest solar company in Europe. So looking at alternative sources of energy is one of the things that we should certainly be looking at, and solar is one of them. Wind is another. At the time when I was looking at the alternatives, wind was not an alternative, but now it is. And floating wind stations are the latest in terms of wind technology. And offshore New London and Groton will be the place where we can achieve that. As for the cost of electricity in our state, we unfortunately have one of the highest costs of electricity in the country. Part of that is because we rely on natural gas, and the price of natural gas fluctuates in terms of electricity generation. The regulatory authority, PURA, there is something that can be done with them that our governor is doing, and that is encouraging them to encourage the utilities to be more proactive, be ready for storms, and when they are failing, to have them penalized, and when they are succeeding, to have them rewarded. So some kind of reward system is already starting to be worked on, and I support the governor in that initiative.
Ms. Gevanter?
Thank you. So climate change is here. It is an existential crisis for our planet, and every Connecticut resident and business is incurring the costs from it because of ongoing inaction in our government. So that includes rising healthcare costs, soaring childhood asthma rates, flood damage to our homes, flood insurance going through the roof, unreliable global supply chains, soaring electricity bills, as John mentioned. This is an absolute nightmare. So what do we need to do? I think we need bold solutions. We need to be innovative. We need to be open-minded, and we need to be willing to work together to address this critical problem. So something that I support exploring is the Transportation Climate Initiative, also known as TCI. This would be working with 2 neighboring states, a regional approach, which I think is really important as well, to levy fees on oil companies to fund climate change action. Now, some may say that, what happens when you give a fee to an oil company, they may pass on some of that cost to the consumer. If they do, it's projected to be about 5 cents a gallon, which, based on how much the average driver in Connecticut, the average amount people drive in Connecticut, 656 gallons a year, that equals $32.80 over the course of an entire year. So that is certainly less than our children's asthma medication, less than repairing flooded basements. So many people went through this just a few weeks ago. So much less than businesses pay in volatility costs. So in the end, I think that this would reduce costs and help save our planet.
Mr. Fazio?
Well, again, I'm glad to hear that Alexis is on the record in support of a new gas tax on Connecticut motorists and the middle class in this state. To get back to the actual question at hand, it's about the infrastructure for our electric utilities and our water. Connecticut, as John alluded to, has the highest electricity costs in the lower 48 of any state in the country. Last summer, people around our district were shocked to see that their electricity bills skyrocketed hundreds of dollars a month. All the while, the state government in Hartford has permitted Eversource, the electric utility, and a very bad actor, I think, to expand its monopoly power vertically into power generation. So how can a company that's supposed to be responsible for a reliable and cheap distribution and transmission of electricity also have the conflict of interest of generating our electricity? Just a couple of years ago, the Democratic state legislature voted a new power contract that was 50% owned by Eversource into law, which the cost of which outside of New London was 3 times as high as the average electricity generation costs in the state. The middle class and the working class are hurting in Connecticut. So we need an all of the above energy approach in order to reduce costs, improve reliability of the electricity grid, and make it easier to do business here, to live here, and to afford to be in Connecticut. We need an open and competitive bidding system for all electricity contracts. Currently, I think they're done too much behind closed doors. They should be out in the open for everyone to see. We need to prohibit the consolidation that I mentioned of our utilities and provide more competition. I think we need conservation measures as to the water crisis. We need to reward people for being conservationists. We need some sort of pricing mechanisms in our utilities. And finally, we need PURA, the regulator in charge of the grid, to be more focused on consumer protection than ambitious central planning type schemes. So there are a lot of important specific issues at hand that affect the middle class and the working class in particular. And I think that anyone who wants to run for office in order to levy new taxes on the middle class, regressive taxes nonetheless, has the wrong answers.
Did you want to add something? Yes, go ahead.
I did, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, I already explained that this is a fee on oil companies, and, words have meaning. This is not a gas tax imposed by the state or collected by the state. This is not a gas tax imposed on consumers. So I do not support higher taxes, but what I do support are bold solutions in order to keep our costs lower than they are in terms of what we are incurring because of climate change. So I don't disagree with any of the other solutions you came up with. I just think that they're insufficient. Particularly Eversource, I definitely agree with you on. It's a great thing that their legislature this last year did pass a bill to hold Eversource to account. But in the end, the prices are too high and the services are too low. And so I don't think we've gone far enough. And I also would want to go further there. Another point I would just like to make quickly about TCI is that in addition to reducing our carbon footprint and working with our partnering states on something that is, again, critical, is also that money is going to go investing into things that we all want and we've already been talking about. So investing in our rail, investing in battery charge stations throughout the state. TCI helps us get there. Thank you.
One moment, please, and I'll come. I need to see how much time was used by Mr. Ryan with his second. That wasn't written on the pad. If you could get that done for us, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Fazio, go ahead.
Sure. So the Transportation Climate Initiative itself, the organization, actually says that the costs on consumers will rise anywhere from 5 to 26 cents from this new initiative. The Lamont administration says that it could generate $1 billion in revenue over the next 10 years. That's an enormous amount. And everyone knows it comes out of the pocketbooks of regular middle-class families in this district and in this state who are hurting and paying too much already. You can call it what you want, but a compulsory fee levied by the government on taxpayers, on regular families, is another tax. And so candidates who say that they're running to cut taxes on all families cannot square that with new fees, new compulsory taxes on workers and families, especially middle class and working class ones in this district and in this state. We have to do well with the money we're already taking from regular people in Connecticut. Enough is enough.
Anything else?
No, I think I've made my point.
Okay.
I would like to reply to both of
Just bear in mind, look at the time used.
Indeed, one of the beauties of running as an independent candidate, which is what I am, is that I'm not beholden to either party or the ideologies of either party. Not beholden to the notion of taxes up or down, not beholden to any other kind of notions. But one of the things I can do is to take good points from each. So I take good points from Alexis, and I take good points from the remarks that Ryan just made about some of the initiatives that are possible as far as utilities are concerned. But one point on TCI, I will say that if I sway between either of these two on that issue, I sway this way on TCI. It is an existential matter that we are dealing with. In the debate earlier this week, we talked to millennials, and their greatest concern is the damage that we in our generation have been doing to our planet. One small step is what TCI is, and I say, let's take it.
Anything else on that question?
Thank you.
All right, then Ms. Gevanter, you're first to respond to this one. Connecticut has one of the highest levels of unfunded pensions and other post-employment benefits liabilities in the country. How would you propose to control these costs and bring Connecticut more in line with neighboring states?
Yeah, I agree. Our unfunded pension debt has been a problem caused by 40 years of mismanagement by both parties. It's absolutely a problem. However, the good news is that we are on the right path to recovery. Governor Lamont has, along with our legislature, passed a bipartisan no tax increase budget that also goes to pay down our pensions and also contribute to our rainy day fund. So this is important. Now we have a volatility cap so that every year when we do have a surplus, as we were lucky to have this year, we make sure that continues to go paying down our pensions and also continue to go into a rainy day fund before we borrow on our investments. We need to continue to be fiscally responsible so that we can continue to bring companies and new good paying jobs into Connecticut, and having a financially stable economic environment is what's going to be really important for that. So I think that obviously this is a big problem. It's going to take a long time to fix it. There's no questioning that. But what we are doing now in terms of holding the line on taxes and being responsible in terms of paying down that debt is what's going to happen, or is how we're going to get that done. Another thing I think that we need to do is considering, when our state employees retire, normally what you have is a one out, one in system. I think we should reform that so that when somebody retires, we go and look at the position, look if there's room for technological innovation and other efficiencies in order to save money as well.
Mr. Fazio?
So Alexis is correct that it's a consequence of 40 years of mismanagement in our state government that we have an enormous unfunded pension and debt liability that's being forced on the middle class in our state. What she doesn't mention is that 36 of 40 of those years, the Democrats have had complete control of the state legislature in Connecticut. This is a consequence entirely of the failed leadership of the party in power in Connecticut. And it goes to show that when governments go in too far in the extreme of either direction, that you have corruption and you have bad government. Now, the volatility cap that Alexis mentioned was a very good development. It was the product of a Republican budget that was passed into law in 2017 when the state Senate was split 18 to 18, and the state government ended up adopting the Republican authored budget over the objections of the Democrat governor, Daniel Malloy, because when the numbers were such that we had a split in the state legislature, it forced compromise. We need close to those numbers again in order to make positive reforms so that the middle class can thrive in this state. We can stop tax increases and we can reform our debt and unfunded pension liabilities. The problem is in this race that if either of my two Democratic opponents win, there's going to be a 2-to-1 Democratic supermajority in the state Senate. So the type of reforms that occurred in 2017 in the case of the volatility cap will absolutely never occur again. In fact, what you'll see more of is what you saw last summer at the height of COVID when we had sky-high record unemployment. The state employees received a 5.5% pay increase in June of 2020. It was the most shameful and unfair thing imaginable while people were suffering, while people had lost their jobs. And yet the Democratic state government did nothing to stop that sort of unfairness. I stand against that unfairness. I stand for balanced solutions that in the long run will make the middle class thrive in Connecticut. We need comprehensive solutions, we need bold new leadership, and we need people who are running for office in order to solve those problems first and foremost. The one last thing I'll say is that Mr. Blankley is wrong about one thing, not many things, but one thing. And that's that no one goes around thinking about the unfunded debt and pension crisis in Connecticut. Well, if your costs of living here are too high, if you've had trouble finding a job, if you haven't gotten a raise in years, if your taxes are too damn high and they keep going up over and over again, then you do think of that implicitly because that's the cause. Corruption and mismanagement and one-party rule in our state government have hurt regular people in our state, and I believe we can do much better with positive reform.
Mr. Blankley?
None of that addresses the question. That was all politics, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking as the independent candidate here, I will not be joining any caucus when I'm elected on August 17th. I will be an independent voice, and that is very important as far as the politics up in Hartford are concerned. To address the question, I ran for state treasurer 3 years ago, and I had a comprehensive set of plans for dealing with our unfunded liabilities. Right now, we have $40 billion worth of assets. When I was running, it was actually 35 billion. So things have improved as a result of Wall Street improving, which has enabled us to balance our budget somewhat, along with federal help in the last go-round. Unfortunately, the liabilities are significantly higher, something of the order of 65 billion. How do we deal with that over time? And the answer is only over time. And that is by increasing economic growth in our state, by investing, as I have suggested, in ways which can alleviate congestion, remove $4 to $5 billion worth of overhang from that congestion. And how exactly do we get a higher rate of return on the $40 billion worth of assets? The answer is we follow Mr. Swenson, who ran the Yale endowment until he unfortunately passed away last year. And that is to invest significantly more in alternative kinds of investments, private investments. 90% of the Yale endowment was in private investment, and his returns beat any other endowment in the country. It is significant. Now, I'm not saying we go to that extent, but what I am saying is there are alternatives and ways in which we can deal with this problem. It's all very well talking about, well, we need to reform it, we need to do this, we need to do that, but we need something specific. And that was one of the specific answers that I had when I ran for state treasurer, and it's one that I have now running for the state senate.
Any other comments on that issue? Yes, go ahead, Ms. Gevanter.
Yes. So Ryan, I just don't think your rhetoric matches reality. What we had this last session is a bipartisan, so many members of your own party, no tax increase budget that resulted in a surplus that then also went to pay down our pension debt and also invest further in our rainy day fund. That's something that was done on a bipartisan basis. Now, as far as what I can do in terms of holding the line on fiscal responsibility and keeping to my word of lowering taxes, I have been consistent on this the entire time. I will lower taxes, I will repeal the estate tax, and I will make sure that we do this while continuing to have a no tax increase budget where we pay down our debts. So you're implying, Ryan, that I can't be trusted to keep my word and that I will somehow capitulate under the pressure of working with my own party up in Hartford. But you know my record. I took on the gun lobby and won. I think I can handle the heat of working with Democrats in Hartford. So, you know, as far as doing one thing and saying another, that's just not me. I'll be okay.
Anything else on that question?
I respect my opponent. I respect Alexis's points. Problem is, in the previous answer, she said that she's in favor of the equivalent of a gas tax, which will raise your gas prices anywhere from 5 to 6 cents at the behest of our state government. The other problem is that indeed, the budget that was passed last year, thanks to billions of dollars of one-time cash from the federal government, resulted in no direct tax increases, but the budget implementer passed in the summer after the budget was passed actually did result in a new tax increase called a highway mileage tax, which will show up in a higher cost of goods at the grocery store and retail outlets for consumers. In 2021, there was a tax increase in the budget. In 2019, there was billions of dollars of tax increases. In 2015, there was billions of dollars of tax increases. 2013, 2011, 2009, the only year that there weren't tax increases was 2017, when there was a 50-50 split in the state Senate. We need to get closer to those numbers so we can force compromise and common sense solutions and fiscal responsibility. That's the reality of the matter.
Ready for the next question? No, go ahead, Mr. Blankley.
Again, I hear a dispute between my two opponents here. I would say yet again, I appeal to the middle on this. Both candidates have said that they are in favor of lower taxes. I have to say on that particular point, a word which I learned when I came to this country 40 years ago. I learned all sorts of new words. And one of the new words I learned was baloney.
Ready for the next question?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Fazio, it's your turn to respond first. What is your position with respect to overriding town control of residential zoning in order to promote construction of affordable housing?
When I ran for office last year, I was firmly opposed to state infringement on local prerogatives, especially over town planning and zoning and schools as well. The Democrats who ran for office in Fairfield County also said the same. The problem was when bills actually came to the floor of the state Senate and the state House, there was a bill that was passed into law that did undermine several matters of local rights over planning and zoning, including over regulating accessory dwelling units and including over using the concept of character in our town zoning codes locally. If you want to send a message to the people in state government that enough is enough, that our towns deserve local autonomy, then we should stand up in this special election to the leadership, Martin Looney, Bob Duff in the state Senate, who want total control of local zoning, and say that no more, we're not going to permit that. And the last point I'll make is that we all want affordable housing. I agree with that. But the sleight of hand that's played at the state government with the governing party is that they call something affordable housing, but they have very, very specific and tightly regulated definitions around it. So it actually isn't reflective of reality.
Mr. Blankley?
Picking up on that last point, which is a very good point, as I've said before, sometimes my opponent on the left says good things, and sometimes my opponent on the right says good things, and he just said a good thing. We don't want control of what we do in this district from Hartford. There is one thing that can be done, however, when it comes to affordable housing. We need to comply with something called 830G, which requires that 10% of our housing stock should be placed in this affordable category. Currently, we're at 5.4%. Every time there's a new development, there is some effort to add an affordable housing component to the development, but it's fraught with problems and abuse. There is one thing that we can do, however, and that was the arbitrary and completely random way in which existing affordable housing stock is not included in the calculation. Now, if it were, we would be very close to the 10% required under 830G. As for other initiatives to increase affordable housing, the Housing Trust Fund, which was set up in Stamford, is now being duplicated in Greenwich. It's currently going through the process in town through the BET and through the RTM. And there is every possibility that some funds from the American Rescue Package may go into the trust fund, along with other contributions, hopefully from private sources. And this will be a major contributor to increasing the affordable housing stock in town.
Gevanter?
I have to agree. Affordable housing is good for residents and our community. We want our teachers, our nurses, our firefighters, and our police to live in the communities they serve. And we want our children to be able to afford to come back here after college. We want our seniors to be able to afford to retire here. I can't be more clear that I also fully support and would advocate for local control. And this is because our towns are best equipped to be innovative, to add affordable housing in a way that preserves our green spaces and our New England feel, and ensures that any new construction fits within the scale of our community. And so, hey, look, I think there's going to be a lot of things we disagree on as this debate continues, but it's just some good news for our district and for Connecticut that we're all on the same page here.
Anything else on that topic? All right, next question, and Mr. Blankley, you're first to respond. Excuse me. What steps would you propose to expand the Connecticut economy, keep young people in the state, and reduce unemployment, which was 7.9% in Connecticut in June of 2021? That placed Connecticut in a tie with New Mexico near the bottom at number 49 for states with unemployment rates that have bounced back the least.
The good news is the number is actually 7.7%, not 7.9, and it's down from 8 point something. So it's trending in the right direction. It's not where it should be by any stroke, but it is at least moving in the right direction. What can we do to make it better? Well, if you look at my experience from my big corporate company days and my experience as an entrepreneurial capitalist, I have skills which my two opponents do not have to grow the economy. First of all, on the big corporate side, I will repeat again, the major capital investment infrastructure plan that I have is not just a plan that I have read about. It is a plan that I know about, and it is very similar to plans that I implemented when working for big corporate firms, hundreds of millions of dollars, and in fact, in one case, $500 million project. So knowing how these things work is very important. On the entrepreneurial side, I started the company 20 years ago. We have dozens of employees. We're currently hiring, as a matter of fact. Starting a business and growing a business is something which I am the only candidate here who has actually done something. I'm the only candidate who actually applied to the business loan, the express loan program that the state has, and found it clumsy indeed. So there are a number of things that I can propose with regard to new business creation. But in the end, it is the bold stroke. It is the capital investment in our ports and getting trucks off our roads that will do the trick.
Ms. Gevanter?
Connecticut is an absolutely wonderful place to live. It's why people like Ryan, who grew up here, came back here. It's why John and I decided to raise our families here. But of course, the pandemic has been devastating to our economy and for really our entire country. Here in Connecticut, we have managed to weather it better than most because of the leadership of Governor Lamont and because of the strength of our rainy day fund. So what have we seen? We have an influx of new families moving to Connecticut. We have had, and by the way, choosing, of course, Connecticut over nearby Westchester and New Jersey. They're choosing Connecticut. We have had 4 large companies announce plans to relocate their headquarters right in our district. This is going to bring 500 new jobs. This is just over the past couple months. 500 new jobs, which is going to be 500 families putting food on the table. This is really good news. There are also financial firms racing for suburban office space right in our downtowns. So there is no question, unemployment is high. It's high because of the pandemic, but it was high before the pandemic for all of the reasons we discussed earlier. But we are getting on the right path and we need to stay the course. So how are we going to do this? I am a business attorney. I spent over 8 years advising companies on how to grow their businesses and expand across the country, navigating a variety of regulatory environments. So I know what businesses are looking for when they want to relocate or headquarter in a state. And so my plan to address unemployment and attract these new companies to our state includes public safety and health, prosperity, and progress. And that's because we need our state to be safe and healthy, to have our companies and families that would work there want to live here. We need prosperity. We need low taxes. We need a business-friendly environment to make sure that they come here. And then we need progress because we need to make sure that our environment is healthy, that this is a place that matches the values of companies and people who want to move here. And so I think that if we focus on all of those things, more businesses will continue to come. And of course, again, it takes some time. The unemployment numbers reflect that. We are in the middle of a pandemic, but we are moving in the right direction. And I would continue to stay the course, work with Governor Lamont, and continue to just do better and better and better.
Fazio?
Just like in the debate we had on Tuesday, I have a significant difference with my Democratic opponents. They paint a much more rosy picture of the economic landscape in Connecticut than just actually exists. When I go up and down the business districts in Greenwich and Stamford and New Canaan and talk to small businesses, as I have the past few weeks, they don't paint a rosy picture. They say that they love this community, that it has great people. I know that, certainly. And that's why it's so disappointing to see the economic numbers as they are. But what they tell me is that demand is falling, that the cost of doing business is rising, that their taxes are too high, that it's difficult to find workers, even though our unemployment rate is tied for the highest in the country. I just believe that we can do so much better in this state. We are not weathering the economic storm better than most states, as Alexis says. We have the highest unemployment rate in the country. That's just not acceptable. But it's a direct consequence of the failures of our state leadership and almost 40 years of unitary democratic rule. When you do something over and over again and expect a different result each time, I think there's an idiom for it. It's not going to happen. We need a total change in direction. And in order to do that, we need specific policy measures, not just platitudes. We need a tax reform plan where we can finance an across-the-board income tax cut for middle-class families in this state. It could be financed in part by reducing tax expenditures, carve-outs, deductions in the tax code, which, yes, John, do number in excess of $6 billion. We can reform our budget and budgetary process, put our state on a debt diet, divest the state of non-productive, non-core assets, which drain hundreds of millions of dollars. We can reform our unfunded pension and health insurance liabilities, and we can improve regulations in order to reduce the cost of healthcare by focusing on the supply side and generating more healthcare itself, and also improve regulations over electricity to reduce the cost of electricity and the cost of living generally for all families. I'm running for this position because I have high standards for our district, because I believe it's truly the best place imaginable to build a life. But our state's economy is hurting. It's been hurting a long time because of the failure of leadership. If we bring a change in direction in Hartford, starting with this election, then the best days can be ahead of us and our economy.
Anything else on that issue? Yes, go ahead, Ms. Gevanter.
I think so.
I'll come back to you. I just saw her first. Go ahead.
Sorry, John. Once again, I just don't think that Ryan's rhetoric matches reality. I think that the voters in our community can feel the turnaround. You can see it. There are bidding wars on our homes. There are companies moving here. There are jobs created here. There is a thriving downtown in all of our cities. So you're right. I do think that we have a very different view of Connecticut and on where it's going. Again, as far as standards, I absolutely am committed to continuing to go in this direction. But to say that we're trying the same thing all over again and expecting a different result, well, I don't know what that means. I think that Governor Lamont is trying something entirely new and it's working. So it is a choice for voters. I think that you're right. I think that there is a clear contrast there.
And I would offer that choice. Again, one can pluck good things from what Alexis has just said and good things from what Ryan has just said. It is true that Ned Lamont, our governor, has attracted companies to the state. It is true that our unemployment rate is going down. It is also true, however, that it's not where it should be and it's not where it was before the what one would call it, the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. And those times are not coming back. And the reason for that is we have two major business verticals in our state. One is defense and the other is finance and financial services. Finance and financial services has become an increasingly capital-intensive business. And automation has only added to the fact that fewer people are needed to manage the large amounts of money that exist in the banking sector. And we saw just recently with People's Bank, the merger and the layoff of 700 people. So we have 500 coming in with the influx of jobs that Alexis mentioned, but we have 700 being lost as a result of a banking merger. Not anything that we can control. These are issues outside our control. And it's not just Connecticut, it is all the states of the Northeast. And this has been something that has been happening for decades as business people have moved from the Rust Belt to the Sun Belt.
Go ahead.
Just quickly, I think there are places in Connecticut where we have a little bit more economic optimism, and they are located around this district. But look at the people who govern these municipalities like Greenwich and New Canaan. It's pragmatic, thoughtful, common sense Republican municipal leaders like Fred Camillo and Lauren Rabin and Nick Williams and Kevin Moynihan, who have presided sensibly over the fiscal and economic situation in their municipalities and supported small business. It's that type of mindset and leadership that we need to bring to Hartford in order to make the entire state thrive. Because if the entire state doesn't thrive, the tax base narrows, the burdens on our district go up, and economic opportunity can wash away from everywhere. We can do far better. I'm optimistic, but it's going to take positive change.
Okay, the time has come for closing statements. So I would ask the timers to clear their stopwatches. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and the timers will let you know when you have a minute remaining as well as 30 seconds. So Mr. Fazio, you are the first. So 1 second here till your timer is ready. If there are problems with that stopwatch, we could, okay, well, use another. The timer in the middle, you go ahead and time it. You're okay, fine. Mr. Fazio, proceed.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight. Thank you everyone for watching. And thank you to my two Democratic opponents for joining me in another important discussion. What's so funny, John? The eyes of Connecticut are on the voters of Greenwich, Stamford, and New Canaan for the next 11 days. They are on us, the voters, to render a verdict as to whether the status quo in our state government is acceptable or whether we can do better. Is it acceptable that Connecticut now has the highest unemployment rate in the country, the second highest taxes, and the second highest debt burden for the next generation to pay? Is it acceptable that car thefts have risen 40% in the last year, homicides 30%, and our police are demoralized all over the state? Is it acceptable that our state government continues to restrict our freedoms and local control of our towns? And is it acceptable that we've had 12 years of one-party rule in our state and little room for compromise or bipartisanship? If someone wanted to hand the Democratic leaders in the state Senate a supermajority to advance a statewide property tax, state control over local zoning and schools, and more unsafe policing policies, I understand why they would vote for either of my Democratic opponents. But if you believe that we can do better, I ask for you to consider a different option. I know we can do better because this community is my home. We have the best people with big hearts. Now we also need a state government that's equal to the caliber of our people. So let's bring people together across the aisle to cut taxes on all families, reduce the cost of healthcare and electricity. Let's support our local police and reduce crime in our most vulnerable neighborhoods. Let's protect personal freedom, local control, our environment, and bring everyone together. On August 17th, I ask for your confidence, your vote, and I promise to work hard every day for every person in our community as your state senator. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blankley, your 2-minute closing.
Speaking as the independent candidate here, although Ryan is quite right, I am still registered the Democrat, but I will be entirely independent. I'm running as a petition candidate, and I'm doing that because I've discovered that there is a strong sense in people out there that they don't want the ideologies of either extreme wing of either party. They want something sensible in the middle. I'm appealing to moderate Democrats, moderate Republicans, and that greater number in the middle, the unaffiliated voters who outnumber either party at this point in time. They know there are sensible things that can be said and sensible things that can be done, and they know that one thing that is not sensible and won't happen and is simply playing to some kind of political ideology is reducing taxes. Both my fellow candidates here are talking about reducing taxes. It is an impossibility. The numbers simply aren't there. And I know that from having been there and seen that, having been a candidate for state treasurer, and also from my years as chief financial officer of major corporations. When the numbers don't add up, they don't add up. So there are other things that we have to do. So this is why I'm proposing the bold approach of infrastructure development for our ports, getting trucks off the roads, creating jobs, reducing pollution, and attracting businesses to the state. We talk about businesses. In fact, businesses are made up of people, and people say to their bosses, you know what, that nice state of Connecticut is a place where we would like to be because there are good schools there. That's where we want our children to be. That's where we want our future to be. And if we can solve the problem of traffic on the roads and get people away from the notion that we can't solve our problems like that, then we will be scoring a major victory. So I'm asking for your vote to elect me your independent candidate, your businessman candidate for the state Senate on August 17th. Thank you, and thank you, League of Women Voters, and thank you, my two opponents.
Thank you. Ms. Gevanter, your closing statement.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. So since I haven't run before, I would just like to briefly introduce myself. I am a business attorney, a gun violence prevention advocate, and a proud mom of 2 young boys. I have spent years advising companies on how to institute fair employment practices while continuing to grow and remain profitable. As a gun violence prevention advocate, I have passed numerous laws in Hartford as the state leader of Moms Demand Action, which has 14,000 supporters here in Connecticut. And those laws, run the gamut from safe storage requirements, bans on 3D and ghost guns, and also investment in community-based violence intervention programs. Now, while gun violence prevention is a widely popular top area and issue of concern, it's not easy to pass these things in Hartford on a wide bipartisan basis, but I did again and again. And I did that by listening finding common ground, and building coalitions to create change. And that's exactly what I'm going to do as a state senator for our district. And so, as I've mentioned before, what I want to do is focus on public safety, again, gun violence prevention, of course, but also, fully funding our police, supporting our firefighters. And that also includes public health, making sure that we keep our vaccination rates high while we also keep our businesses open and keep everybody safe. Prosperity, we've talked a lot about tonight. I will lower taxes, including repeal the estate tax, and I will help bring businesses into Connecticut. Progress is something that we haven't had a chance to talk about a lot tonight, but I think this is where there is a clear distinction. I am going to be a champion for equality, for women's rights, for our environment. For voting access. This is what I'm going to do. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you candidates this evening. And now I'd like to turn it back to Aya DeSimone for some important information about the election. Mute.
Do you guys hear me?
Now. Yes.
Thank you to our candidates for sharing their views and to our moderator, Kay, for facilitating today's debate. To our members and our guests, thank you all for participating and for your ongoing support. 3 quick reminders before we end. First of all, remember democracy functions best when we all participate, and voting on August 17th is important. Voting is a civic duty and a privilege, in my opinion. So voters turning out at these elections, off-year elections, tends to be much lower, especially in special elections like this. So please do get out the vote and get your friends and family out to vote on August 17th. Typically, there are a lot of people away or traveling during August, so hopefully those people obtained or downloaded their absentee ballot from the town clerk or the town's website. For the election on August 17th, we wanted to highlight, for those of you actually voting in person at District 7, there has been a change in venue. Instead of voting at the Greenwich High School, voting will be now held at Central Middle School in the cafeteria. That's at 9 Rock Lane in Greenwich, and polling hours remain the same. So 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., that has not changed. And that is only for District 7 voters. The next reminder is, don't forget, there is another election coming up in November. The fall's municipal elections are equally as important as this special election. Local elections are where important decisions are made about town leadership, about the administration, taxes, funding our town and our schools. So it's really important that we turn out in November. So start planning now. If you need any help, make sure you visit our website, the League of Women Voters of Greenwich. We have lots and lots of events and resources listed on our website. And we're constantly updating and developing new programs and events for civic education. So please do visit our website. And again, we're planning our next debates will be in October for the upcoming November election. And as usual, we will be producing and making available the League of Women Voters voter guide, which will be available for reading and downloading from our website, LWVGreenwich.org, for all candidates, where you can find information about all the candidates and all the public offices that will be will be having elections come November. Thank you again for attending this debate tonight, and see you at the polls and at the next LWVG event. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.